Good to go. Our 10-minute break turned a little long. That's okay.
We're visiting.
That's right. We're all chill. All right, so we're going to start looking at Ecclesiastes again, and we're in chapter 3. And the title for this, which is so important, and this really is the crux of what we're doing here, is that there is a season for everything. And a lot of ways, when you think about this, it just gives you such a relief to go, this is a season. Whatever it is you're going through with your kids right now, it's either going to be really comforting or terrifying. This is a season. I'm not going to lie to you that 2017 started off, for me, realizing this was a season that was going to be passing very quickly. It was the last full year that our eldest was going to be with us, before she goes off to college. And that just, I have a really, really hard time dealing with that. Very, very hard time dealing with that. I don't know what it is. I know what it is. I'm just afraid that I'm going to have regrets about opportunities that we missed or things like that, And I think it's totally normal. And so in that way, it's like this is a season where we have to make everything count, because it's going to be gone. But this is what, but at the same time, I have to realize it is a season. And it's supposed to pass. And if we were to keep her here at home, that would be dysfunctional. That would be something would be wrong with that because she wouldn't be getting to fulfill the purpose that God has for her life. So it's enough for us as parents to try and figure this out. But if we're able to really impress this upon kids, there is a season for everything. That's one of the reasons we do all these, traditional things, because that helps really reinforce it with the kids. There is a season for this. It's a very biblical thing, too, because the Old Testament is filled with all of these festivals and feasts that they did. And God prescribed them and said, you're going to do this at this time every year and this at this time every year, because I want you to spend that time every year remembering this thing. The thing that we do every week when we come together is we do the communion, because Jesus said, every time you come together, I want you to eat this bread and drink this juice, not that it's going to fill you up and satisfy you physically, but to remind you of what I have done for you. And so the seasonal repetition thing, at the beginning of Ecclesiastes, it made it sound like all of creation is a machine that's going to grind us up. But all of creation and all of our spiritual life is cyclical and seasonal. And kids need to know that. They need to understand that.
We need to remember that. When I get sick of, when I was driving the kids all over, or doing this, or having to go to that, and my mom would remind me, Julie, it's just a season. This is just a season. This is going to end. Your kids are one day going to be gone, and you will not be the chauffeur. And that just helped kind of keep things in perspective. Okay, the rest of my life is not driving kids from here to there.
Right, when they did cross country. That's one we had to keep in mind. It's just a season. Our son was in wrestling. This is just a season. When they used to do soccer, or as we called it, mob ball when they were little, It's just a season. It's going to end. And so it's really, really important. So what it says is there's a time for everything. There's a time for everything that is done on earth. There is a time to be born. There's a time to die. There's a time to plant. There's a time to pull up what is planted. What's so important about this chapter, as we're going to read through the next several verses, is it's got a lot of really great reminders for us as parents about the things that need to develop in our kids.
All right. Then down in verse 4, it talks about there is a time to weep and a time to laugh. There is a time to be sad. This just kind of goes along with teaching your kids emotional intelligence. And it takes a lot of practice for me to remember I need to rejoice when something good happens to other people. Sometimes I'll get a little jealous, or why'd that happen to them? Rejoice.
They don't deserve that.
They didn't work for that. Rejoice when others are rejoicing. And when something bad happens, don't be like, she got what she deserved. Be sad when other people are sad. Teach them compassion and empathy for others.
The second half of verse 5 says there's a time to embrace someone and there's a time not to embrace. And that's something that's so important to help kids develop. If we can teach that concept to kids, it helps them to develop the idea of conflict resolution. There is a time when you and your friend are going to not be on the best of terms. And that's when, and it may be that you need to take a step back. There was a family, when we lived in California, our eldest Emma, she made really good friends with a boy that was in her kindergarten class. And that family started coming to church with us, and they got in our grow group with us, and I was privileged to get to baptize both the parents. And I mean, we were pretty close. We lived close together in the neighborhood, and always doing stuff together. And then something happened, and we didn't know what it was. But all of a sudden, we were getting the cold shoulder from them, big time. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. Well, it turns out the boy had gotten his feelings hurt about something and had told his mom that Emma had done something.
Which she probably did.
And there was a time we got called when they were in first grade, and the teacher said, Emma's got Max on the ground and she's choking him. But they had that, they were good friends. And what's interesting is to this very day, they are super close. Even though they're on opposite coasts of the country, they're super close. But there was this time where there was something, and it was just weird. Something was going on. And so we kept trying to find out what was going on. We would ask the mom what was going on, the dad, and they just said, if you don't know, we're just not going to tell you. We're like, what has happened? And so we kind of, we made a time to find out from them. She's like, well, Maddie's looking at us ugly at school because we know that Emma's talking about something, that Max said, it was ridiculous and it was goofy, and that the mom was getting so upset about this was really ridiculous. But it was very upsetting to our kids because they were like, there's this family that we've done stuff with, and Max is Emma's best friend, and all of a sudden, they're just not, they won't have anything to do with us. And it's like they're being ugly to us. And we had to have a serious talk as a family and say, listen, y'all, we don't know what's going on. We've tried to figure out what we've done to hurt them, and we can't figure out anything that we've done to hurt them. But
their feelings are hurt.
Their feelings are hurt. They are hurt. For whatever reason, they are hurt. And if we are ever going to resolve this conflict, it is going to be on us to make it happen. And so we arranged a family meeting, y'all. It was not like, it was kind of like the mafia, but not exactly. So we went to their home, and we sat down with them in the living room, and we literally, and we told the kids, watch what happens, watch what we do, watch what we say, because this is going to be a critical thing. And Julie and I just sat down with them, and we said, we are sorry. We are so sorry that you are hurt. We are so sorry that something has hurt you. We don't know what we've done, but we are humbly offering our apologies, and we are asking your forgiveness for it. And that was not an easy thing to do at all. We
were ticked at them for being
We were like, y'all are totally mistreating us, but whatever. But we knew there is a time to take that high road and be the one to say, all right, if this is going to get resolved, it's going to be on me. And I can't tell you, it wasn't like everything was just like, oh, it's better. We had to listen to basically what had been misconstrued and twisted and all this stuff in a very not healthy way. And just kind of accept it and say, okay, even though we knew it wasn't exactly true, and say, again, we humbly apologize, and we want to pray with you about this. And over time, things, returned back to normal, to where, now if we ever go back to California to visit, they're probably the family we're going to stay with, But that experience, it was so hard, and it was so awkward, and it was so uncomfortable for us, but we felt like we have to do this. We knew it was a very teachable moment, and so, yeah, when he says there's a time to embrace someone and a time not to embrace, that was a really key one.
And something along the lines of conflict resolution that I personally believe it's really important that you model to your kids is, especially if Rob and I are in a fight and we're apologizing to each other, a tendency we'll have is, I'm sorry if you think that I blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, So we have a rule that you have to say, I'm sorry that I, instead of I'm sorry if maybe that, no, yes. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings by. So just a little.
Yeah, owning your wrong.
Exactly. Skipping down to the bottom half of verse 6, there's a time to keep and a time to throw away. I believe this is talking about teaching your kids stewardship. If they take, I was never one to force my kids to eat everything we had on the table. You have to at least try it, try a bite. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. But if you put a glob on your plate, you're going to eat that glob. Just the whole idea of we're not going to waste it. So you take what you want, but you eat what you take. If we go shopping, I remember one time that they picked something out, and for whatever reason, my son's like, yeah, I like that, let's go. And then never wore it. And so the rule is, if you pick it out, you have to wear it.
And we have that conversation in the store.
You think this would go without saying, but just, we're not going to waste the things that God has given us.
And we will tell them, listen, if I'm buying you this pair of pants, you must wear it at least 3 times in the next month, you know?
And
a lot of
sometimes they'll
times
just
they'll go,
put it back on the rack because they
"Never mind."
know they're just, yeah. Verse 7 goes on to say, a time to tear and a time to mend. There's a time to be silent and a time to speak. Again, that just goes back to relational cues. And I really want to encourage you guys as much as possible. This is one of those times at spring cake, my son, I said, "Well, how can I improve?" He goes, "Mom, you just assume a lot of things before I'm even finished talking." So he'll start something, and this is why Rob and I will fight a lot of times, is I'll finish their sentence in the way that I think that they're going. I'm not stopping to, as we like to say, listen generously. So the whole idea of time to be silent and a time to speak, I pray for discernment every day to know the difference when I need, and just to try to be a generous listener to my kids, listening to them without trying to finish their sentences or jump in, and model that for them in the hopes that they too will become generous listeners.
And then the last kind of cue here that I think really speaks to direct things that we're to shape in the kids. I'm jumping down to verse 16 really quickly. He says, "Here's something else I saw on earth. Where people should be treated right, they're treated wrong. Where people should be treated fairly, they're treated unfairly." And I'm going to tell you, if you have more than one kid, this is going to jump to the front of almost, well, a lot of conversations right away. It's not fair, you know, he got this and I didn't, or I had to do this and they didn't, you know. Or, you know, talking about what other kids have. You know, why can't I have this? So-and-so has it. It's not fair, you know. And so the idea of fairness is something they are primed to understand. And I believe that there's something holy and redemptive in that. Well, let's take it and turn it around and say, let's talk about what's fair and what's not fair in the world. There's a lot of stuff that's not fair in the world. Social justice is a huge thing. And for kids who are coming up, especially in this generation, that's something that's put right at the forefront of what you should care about is what is fair in the world and what's not fair in the world. And a lot of times people have this idea that, well, you know, you can't be Christian and care about social justice because, you know, that's just not what churches do. Well, the fact is Jesus was the biggest, you know, proponent for promoting social justice in the world. He was the one, you know, his life statement was to come and to free those who were in captivity, to give sight to those who are blind, you know, to speak truth to those who need to hear the truth. He wants to execute social justice. And so how important, and the way we do this is we give our kids, a lot of times they do get caught up in that. This isn't fair, that's not fair. They need to get a bigger picture. It's not just about what's happening in your life. It's about what's going on outside. It's about, this is a big world, and there's a lot of going. So anytime we can get them outside of their comfort zone, you know, if a kid thinks that their life is difficult, all they need to do, and we've discovered this as grown-ups, is just encounter someone whose life is more difficult than theirs. Mm-hmm. And then it puts things in perspective. And that's why we do things like, you know, at an age-appropriate time, there is a tent community of homeless people in Savannah. And so we took the kids down there one week just to kind of, we had some socks and some things like that. It was getting cold. It was going to get down to like 65 at night. So we were taking extra socks and some gloves and some things like that. And I'm here to tell you, it was stunning, the conditions these people are living in. It's just under an overpass, and when I say it's a tent community, it's not like nice tents, and it's not even all tents. It's like stuff that's strung up, you know, and it's an atrocious smell, and what you're seeing, there's just all kinds of filth and things like that, and but our kids needed to be there, and they needed to do that, and because we had to give them a talking to before we went in. No matter what you see, we're here to love. We're here to just try and connect, and I was so moved because we came to the tent of this one woman, and she was, you know, and you have no idea if there's any kind of, you know, if these people are even sober or anything like that. But this one woman was there, and she kind of, it turns out, was kind of the matriarch sort of the area, and she had cats, and when I say cats, they were kittens that were like this big, and all it took was looking at them, not super close, to see that they were just crawling with fleas. But a couple of the girls we had told them, we're here to love on people. And so they saw this as a way to connect. And they said, hey, can we hold your cats? And so they picked up these kittens, seeing that they're crawling with these things, but just, you know, petting them and talking about how sweet. And the woman just lit up. No one had ever cared about her cats before. And it was so important for our kids to see that it's not right that people should live like this when we live like this. That's another reason why when we're so excited about this summer. We get a chance to take the kids to Zimbabwe. We've been to Zimbabwe on short-term mission trips a few times. And this is a country that used to be the breadbasket of Africa. It was one of the most productive and fruitful places. And because of horrible leadership and terrible droughts and things like that, their economy has tanked, and it is now it's got some of the worst places to farm on the planet. And an entire generation has been wiped out by the AIDS epidemic. And so you've got kids who are being raised by grandparents or by other people, who were ever closest by to raise them. And we go out into the villages, and these are people, they don't even have electricity, I mean, we are so far out that there's nothing. And for the kids to see that, but what's beautiful is they encounter Christians with a hope and a joy that they have never seen. And they encounter worship with zero resources that is more filled with joy and life and vitality and the Spirit's movement than they have ever experienced stateside. And so for them to see that, it kind of helps readjust the equilibrium there, of saying, all right, so there are things that are way worse than what I've experienced, but there is also there are things that are way better about that than what I have. And it helps them to kind of adjust it and say, because when they come back from an experience like that, without a doubt and without exception, they go, I've got more stuff than I need. And things that I thought were difficult are not nearly as difficult as I thought they were, because I don't have to walk 6 miles with a 10-gallon bucket of water on my head, just to have a cup of tea, much less flush the toilet. They don't even have those. And so, you don't have to go to Zimbabwe, and you don't have to go to Savannah. You've got places, very close by where you can take your kids just to see, and not like, hey, look at the poor people, or look at the prisoners, or whatever it is. Hey, let's go get into that situation. Let's see how God can use you in that situation. So important.
So as you look at these seasons and these different times for different things, some of the things we've done just to try to jump into life cycle is work in rites of passages, right? A rite of passage for our kids for different things, just to make something they have to look forward to. Different, like, now they can take ownership of getting keys to the house, or now, like, Ethan was so excited when it was he was old enough to wear cologne. I know it sounds silly.
Yeah, was it the 10th birthday?
Yeah.
When was it undershirts? Is that 5?
I think that was 6. He
so
got
yeah,
undershirts,
because that was the thing. You're gonna wear undershirts now, which was a big deal. And then it was cologne another year. And then the biggest one was, we got him a razor and some shaving cream and stuff.
And for the girls, it was like piercing their ears, or the next milestone was getting to wear some lip gloss, or the big one was when they got a phone. In our family, we had decided that when they got into middle school that they would be able to have a phone. So just not handing them everything, but just building it into, it's not the season for that. It's not the time for that, which is really hard when you have the oldest. When they're all pretty close together, she'll get to do things that the others don't. And so it's hard to communicate, well, I'm not that much young. Well, yeah, but it's not your season. It's not your time.
And what this tells us is there is a time for everything. There's a time for everything. And so that fairness or whatever it is, there's a time for that. And you're going to see it.
Another thing we try to do is we have monthly dates with the kids. And like I said before, my mom's in the house with us. So we've got 3 adults, 3 kids. And once a month, we just rotate who goes with who. We take that kid out and train them on, like Rob trains Ethan on how to treat, how you treat a woman on a date. And then Ethan, when he goes out with me, he can practice those skills.
I'm instilling in the girls, this is how, when you go out on a date with a guy, this is how he should treat you, And if a guy doesn't treat you the way that I'm treating you right now, you make a phone call, you walk out.
And it's a really good time to get that kid one-on-one and just ask them, how can I improve as a parent? I mean, honestly, I think that blows your kids away when you ask them that. They'll give you good answers. They'll be honest with you, because we're constantly telling them how to improve as kids. And so that's a big thing, I think, goes a long way.
Another thing that was kind of a rite of passage thing is I told the kids that, because I love camping, I love going out, and the kids enjoy that. Julie, not so much at all. Camping is a hotel or something.
Yeah. People do that for fun?
Yeah, exactly. The one time we went camping, we were laying in the middle of the night, she's just staring up and going, I can't believe people do this for fun. But I love it, and the kids love it. And so we just kind of made this there really was no research or rhyme or reason behind it, but I said, when the kids turn 10, when they turn 13, when they turn 16, right around their birthday, I will take that kid out, and we'll just do a camp out together. Just having fun, no strings attached, just because as a dad and as a, pretty busy, I always covet having that time with them anyway. And I have been blown away at some of the things. When you get a kid out of their element and just on, some of the things they'll tell you, it's amazing. And so I come back from these going, I feel so much closer to this kid. And, it's one of those things where it's like, our relationship is different and it's better. And I keep going, I wonder how many days this will last before it reverts back. But, then another thing is just, trying to make every opportunity. As a pastor, I've got a real pretty busy schedule a lot, and so I don't have a lot of time with the kids in the afternoon, especially as they get older and it gets busier and busier. And so just making, some of the absolute best time I've had with our oldest was when she was in middle school, and I was driving her to school every day, and it was about a 30-minute drive. And just, I built into this time, I said, we're going to make this redemptive. And so I would have her read a psalm while we were driving, and I'd just say, kind of walk through, kind of like that pro-app thing we talked about earlier. What do you think God's saying in that? What's something we can take away from that? What's some questions that you think that you would like to have answered from that? And that just kind of evolved over the years to where even now that she's driving, and that our son is driving as well, I'll go in with them to school, a couple of times a week, and we talk on the drive. What did you read in God's Word today? What is He saying to you? What do you think He has for you in this day? How can we pray about this day? And it's become such a part of the routine. I'm really excited because 3 days of the week, I don't go with them. Emma drives, and the other two are with her, and it's just the kids. And after they were doing this for about a week, and we were really nervous about it when they first started. It's like, the kids are going off, all of them by themselves. And they didn't know the first 2 days I followed at a distance just to make sure they made it safely. But they kind of volunteered to us. Yeah, they said, we get to school about 10 minutes early, and we sit in the parking lot, and we talk about what we've read in the Bible, and and which just thrilled me. But it just started from that idea of we're going to redeem this time that would otherwise be mundane. We'd be yawning and going, what's up with your day or whatever, or not even talking, because that's really easy to do, especially early in the morning. They're not super talkative, and so it takes a little drawing out. But
we have found they also use that time to
talk about us.
To talk about us and the things we're doing that drive them crazy. And they'll say, like what we said when we were in the car. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. All right, skipping down to verse...
But that's okay, too, because they're close.
Yeah. Skipping down to verse 9. What do workers get for their hard work? I've seen the heavy load God has put on human beings. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also given people a sense of who He is. But they can't completely understand what God has done from beginning to end. And kids just need to know from the beginning, we're not going to understand everything God does. And why do we want a God we can figure out anyways? We could be our own God if we could figure Him out. And just to trust that He is sovereign in and out of every season. And I really try, especially as my kids get older, and especially as Emma is about to go off, to say, you are going to doubt. You're going to have times when you doubt the very existence of God. And just letting her know that's normal, but you don't pull away from Him during those times, you push in. So when you start having those doubts, that's fine, because you're going to grow to a deeper level of faith if you push into Him and ask Him those hard questions and follow after Him.
Yeah, He's big enough to handle your doubts, because there's a staggering statistic about kids kids have been raised in a church, in a Christian home all their lives, and when they turn 18 and leave home, it's something like 70% of them walk away from their faith. And that is like one of the most grim, depressing things I've ever heard. There's a lot of research that has been done, though, that gives us some really good ideas about how to make sure that doesn't happen. But so as they go away, that's why we tell them, listen, you are going to have doubts. The reason that they walk away is a lot of times if they go off to a school where there are schools out there where professors will say, it is my job to shatter every belief that you have in God in your first semester here. And that's a pretty ugly trick. But they're gonna run out of the kids too, who are like, oh, you believe in all that stuff? And we just want them to be ready. Yeah, somebody's gonna say something that maybe you haven't considered before, because that's what they do. They'll say, oh, really? Well, have you ever heard about, what do you think about Immaculate Conception or something? One little thing that they think is some kind of weird about the Bible, and they're like, oh, that's an interesting question. You really think? And they think that, we pull out that one card and the whole house of cards is going to fall and their faith is going to go away. No, you're going to have doubts. As I've been following Jesus, my whole life, and I'm a pastor, so I'm a professional Christian. And I have doubts sometimes, too, because I don't understand why something is happening. And that doesn't mean that I'm giving up on my faith. What it means is I've got to trust that God is bigger than me, and he's smarter than me. As Tommy Nelson, one of our favorite authors, actually the guy whose study of Ecclesiastes is based on, he says, two things I got to remember is, when I've got a doubt and I've got a question for God, I got to remember that God's not dumb enough to trust everything to me, because I'm not smart enough to do whatever it is that he can do. And so really what we do is we tell kids, you know what, when you have those doubts, really, verse 14, I know everything God does will last forever. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be taken from it. God does that so that people will have respect for him. He is so much bigger than we can understand. And instead of going, why, just go, wow. Just imagine. He might actually be so big and so amazing that we will just never even be able to figure him out. And that's okay. Like Julie said, I want a God that I can't figure out.
All right, verse 18 says, I also said to myself, God tests human beings. He does this so that they can see that in certain ways they are like animals. So tough times are going to come, and they're going to grow us. And something my mom always encouraged me to do, and I think it helps, is don't shelter your kids from all those hard times. If they're on the park and someone takes their toy, don't go chase that kid down saying, give my kid back his toy. Let your kid have the experience of dealing with that conflict on their own. Or don't always be calling the teacher saying, why are you unfair to my kid? Put that, in as much as is reasonable, on your child to go to the teacher and talk that first. And then if things don't get resolved, you can step in. But as much as possible, step back and let God do what he wants to do through those tough times. If a kid's being mean to your child, so many parents are, calling the other parent going, I don't like the way your child treated my child. I would encourage you to stay out of it, talk through it with your kids, pray through it with your kids, give them the chance of letting God work through those really hard times.
Verse 19, surely what happens to animals happens to people too. Death waits. These are really interesting verses, by the way. Death waits for people and animals alike. People die just as animals do. All of them have the same breath. People don't have any advantage over animals. In other words, you know what? In this realm, all living things are subject to the same laws of nature and the same laws of aging and all that stuff. But there's a difference between humans and animals. Animals don't think they run the universe. And as kids, especially as they get into those adolescent years and those teenage years, when they start to get, it's a normal part of their development that their whole universe becomes centered around themselves. The best description I ever heard of adolescence is it's a 24-hour-a-day attempt to not be embarrassed. And that's exactly what it is when they're adolescents and teenagers. And the reason is because all they care about is, I don't want to look bad. I don't want people to to laugh at me, or I don't want to stand out. I want to go with the flow or whatever. But in that, they're becoming incredibly egocentric, because all they care about is, well, how's that going to affect me? Well, how's that going to make people look at me? How's that going to make people think about me? And so, what Solomon's saying here is, you know what? Just go to the ant. Animals don't worry about this. Look at your dog. Is he worried about that? Look at your cat. He's not worried about it. And we need to be the same way. We don't run the universe. God wants us to remember this.
Verse 21 says, who can know whether the spirit of a person goes up? Who can tell what the spirit of an animal goes down to the earth? We don't know what eternity holds. Only God knows those things. And something we really, one of our family mottos is, in our hearts we make our plans, but the Lord decides where our steps will take us. And we have to say that all the time, because we are constantly making plans that God sees fit to change. And so it's just kind of, in our hearts we make our plans, and then they know the rest from there.
And by the way, make a note, mentally at least, of that. Ecclesiastes 3:21. It's because you're going to need an answer for this. Your kids are going to say, well, when Fluffy dies, is he going to go to heaven? And you say, who can tell whether the spirit of an animal goes down into the earth? God didn't tell us. Then we get to chapter 4.
Suffering, hard work.
Suffering, hard work, and no friends.
Anyone ever been there before?
And here's the thing about it. Life with God is eternally better, but it's not easy. And that's the thing. We got suffering,
So verse
hard
1
work,
says,
and no friends.
I looked and saw how much people were suffering on this earth. I saw the tears of those who were suffering. They don't have anyone to comfort them. Power is on the side of those who treat them badly. Those who are suffering don't have anyone to comfort them. And basically, I don't know if y'all like Jerry Seinfeld, but we have a quote from him that we enjoyed. He said, pain is information flooding in to fill a knowledge gap. So you walk into a stump and, that pain is flooding your toe because you didn't realize that thing was in your way. Or so we just thought that was kind of funny. Life is just full of pain, and only God can give it meaning. When our youngest daughter was in the 6th grade, she was really good friends with this little girl, and they were like best friends. And we started noticing some differences in Maddie, and she would be getting in fights with this girl, Callie, and Callie was, I can't even tell you how skinny she was. She was like this rail. And Maddie is not fat at all, but she would say, oh, how much do you weigh? Oh, you weigh that much. And she just kind of, in that 1 year, really gave Maddie some complexes about the way that her body image.
Instilled doubts in her about her body image.
And it really stuck with Madeline, and we really had to work through that pain and talk with her about how this stinks, and this, God does not, he's not happy that this is happening, but he's going to use it, Madeline. He's going to take this pain of yours, he's going to use it for a purpose. Just, your kids are going to go through really hard things, and just praying through it with them and reminding them that, yeah, it stinks, but God's walking through it with you, and he's not going to let any of it be wasted. He's going to use it for a purpose.
And this was one of the hardest things we've ever had to do, is because we had to tell her, they run all the classes together, and we said, this girl is not a good friend for you, and you've got to separate from her.
And we couldn't on her to do.
We couldn't go in and do that. They were in 6th grade. They were going to different classes together. We couldn't, and we had decided we're not going to go in and try and manipulate the system. We always pray that our kids are going to get put in the right teachers' classes, and so we don't try and contact the counselors and get their schedule set for this teacher or that teacher or whatever. We're trusting God's putting them in the right place, and that's a hard thing to do. But we also had to say, Maddie, you've got to separate yourself from her.
Don't be mean to her. Don't fight with her.
But
just tell her we
can't
can't
be
be friends right now.
This is a season where you can't be friends. And it was hard. And we even resisted the urge to go to the teacher and say, can you put them, in separate seats across the room from each other? But Maddie had to learn that. It was so hard for her. But she did. She extricated herself from that relationship. And over the years, it was able to, it's a much healthier kind of a thing now because of that. And that's one of the things. I believe God taught her something really important about, toxic relationships, that you got to have an eye for it, and you got to be able to keep yourself away. She has a heart to want to fix people and help people. And so I think she's going to always be drawn to these kinds of things. And so I think this was such an important way that God has used pain to teach her something for life. Verse 7 says this, again, I saw something on earth that didn't mean anything. A man lived all by himself. He didn't have any sons or brothers. His hard work never ended, but he wasn't happy with what he had. Who am I working for? He asked. Why don't I get the things I enjoy? That doesn't have any meaning either. In fact, it is a very bad deal, says the New International Reader's Version. The guy is working so hard and he's not seeing the end. He's waiting for something. And in life, there's going to be waiting. That is a season that we have. There is waiting. And kids need to understand there is waiting that's going to happen. But it doesn't mean we just sit and stare. We have to teach kids that waiting is good for us in its own way. We know the passage from Isaiah. Those who wait on the Lord shall what? Renew their strength. And that's the key. It's not just waiting. It's waiting on God. It's not waiting for God. It's waiting on God. Because that delayed gratification, if we're waiting on him and knowing he's going to do, that's the essence of faith. This is how they're going to build faith. There is something good coming. We're waiting for it, but we know it's going to happen. We're watching for it, whatever the season of waiting is. It's a chance to learn to lean on God. They've got to learn this. If we can give them this in those tangible opportunities, they're going to be so well equipped for life. And the other thing is, waiting helps kids to enjoy what they have right now. If I'm waiting for something to get better, well, it's gonna come, but look what we have in the meantime. And our kids learn pretty young, entitlement is a bad word. We don't want to hear it. And so if we ever tell a kid that I'm starting to see a little bit of entitlement, they're like, oh no, because it is. It's a very anti-biblical concept. And so waiting is one of the ways that God is just reminding you, you've got some pretty good things in your life right now.
Enjoy them while you can. Verse 9 says, 2 people are better than one. They can help each other in everything they do. Suppose either of them falls down, then one can help the other up. This is teaching relationships trump stuff every single time. It goes on to say, suppose a person falls down and doesn't have anyone to help them up. Then feel sorry for that person. Or suppose 2 people lie down together, then they'll keep warm. Found that out last night when I was cold. But how can one person keep warm alone? One person could be overpowered, but 2 people can stand up for themselves. And a rope made out of 3 cords isn't easily broken. I just want to encourage you to build this idea of sanctuary in your home. Your home is a safe place. It is a sanctuary. It is where they should feel the presence of the Lord and the peace of the Lord when they come to it. And a lot of this, you have to be really intentional, at least we've had to with our kids, especially when it comes to the way that they talk to each other. We have to just cut it off. That is not appropriate. That is not how you speak to your best friend. I always call their siblings, but that is your best friend. That person right there is your best friend. And our girls in the house that we moved into a few years ago, they desperately wanted their own room, and I don't know, I really felt the Lord.
We had enough rooms for them to have their own room each.
They could have had their own room, and I really just felt the Lord saying they need to practice sharing and to being together, and so we've made them share their own room, and they are so close. They truly have become best friends. But they struggle. Their brother a lot of times feels left out, and that's something we're constantly trying to build back in, include him. This whole idea of we are the Knatzers. My mom, I think she took it a little extreme when I was growing up. Our last name was Gibson, and she'd be like, "We're the Gibsons. We're better than everybody else out there. Everybody else is losers," So I try not to go that far, but just this idea of we're the Knatzers. Of course we've got God with us. We're going to get through this. Just that idea of we are a team. This home is a sanctuary. We have each other, and God is at the center of it. Just sometimes we have to remind each other of that.
We're Knatzers, and Knatzers look out for Knatzers. It's great if they have that kind of that team identity there, because it talks about that belonging. But it also, when they talk about what other kids have that they don't, we say, well, we're Knatzers. We're different.
We don't do that.
That's just how it is. So it's been an hour. We'll take another break right now, and then we'll finish out this session. Because are we going to do lunch at noon? Is that right? Sweet. All right. So let's take a 5-minute break. How about? We all know how to get to stuff.